What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to give you my 2024 Big 12's football spring power rankings for the upcoming 2024 college football season. Yesterday, I gave you my Big 10 spring power rankings, and a couple days ago, I gave you my SEC spring power rankings. If you have not seen those videos, be sure to go back and check them out right here on the channel. Now we're going to give you my Big 12 spring power rankings for the 2024 season. And again, this is based off of returning production and how good I expect each team to be this year for the upcoming 2024 season. So we're going to go from bottom to the top here, and we're going to just talk about each individual team here in the Big 12 and how good do I expect each team to be, and also what are their weaknesses and what are their biggest strengths coming into 2024 as well. So let's go ahead and get right into this list. We'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top, and we start here at number 16. Number 16 for me is Arizona State. I think Arizona State is going to be bad this year. I think they don't go winless in the Big 12. You look at this team coming off a very rough season last year, of course, in their last year in the Pac-12. This will be their first year in the Big 12 this year. And like I said with the Big 10 from yesterday, I don't really expect anybody to go winless in the Big 12 this year, like I mentioned, and also in my projected standings for all the Power 4 teams except for the SEC to go winless. But you look at Arizona State, I think they'll be a little bit better this year with their second-year head coach. They do have a decent amount of production on the offensive side of the football coming back this year. So I think the offense might have a chance to be pretty good. Defensively might be a concern, but they just don't have that playmaker on both sides of the football. So how good will Arizona State be? Kind of hard to tell as of right now, but their schedule is what is the reason why they do end up here being at the bottom of the Big 12. They do have a tough schedule, but I think Arizona State does have a chance to win some Big 12 games. It's that they're just going to be an underdog in almost every single one of their Big 12 games, but some of them are definitely close games. I think Arizona State will be a very competitive team this year, but again, offensively, I think that's going to be their biggest strength this year is that offensive side of the football. But Arizona State here at number 16 at the bottom of the Big 12, and then number 15 is Houston. I do expect Houston to be a little bit better this year. They're also coming off a disappointing season, but you look at the offensive side of the football, going to lose a lot of talent from last year's team on the offensive side of the football. And then defensively, you look at the defensive side of the football, they could be really good on that side of the football, but it's kind of hard to tell how good, like Arizona State, we just talked about it. It's kind of hard to tell how good Houston's going to be. This team used to be at the top in the American Athletic Conference, but once they came to the Big 12, things got a little bit tougher here for Houston, and they're going to lose a lot of talent from last year's team. But I think they'll definitely be better than Arizona State. I think Houston definitely has a more better roster than the Sun Devils do, even though they do have a decent amount of production coming back. But you look at Houston, kind of hard to tell how good this team is actually going to be. So that's the reason why I do have them here at number 15 at the bottom of these Big 12 power rankings. Moving on to number 14, Baylor. Baylor comes in here at number 14, a disappointing year for them last year at 3-9. We'll see if Baylor can turn things around this year. They do have a decent amount of production coming back on the offensive side of the football. So I think the offense will be a little bit better this year, but defensively, they do have some question marks on the defensive side of the football. Lost quite a bit of talent there on the defensive side of the football from last year, and this team doesn't have a lot of production coming back, but again, the offensive side of the football, they do bring back about 71% overall coming back this year. So yeah, you can say that's not a really good amount of production, but it's a decent amount of production here for Baylor. But again, the last couple of years have not been really good for the Bears. The last couple of years have just been really absolutely, not terrible, but just not really where they need to be. They were only 6-6 in 2022, and then last year, like I mentioned, 3-9. So again, Baylor, disappointing team from last year. We'll see if they can turn things around in 2024. But just like Houston and Arizona State, this is a team that I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out. Do they have that playmaker on both sides of the football? We'll find out and see if Baylor can turn things around. Like I mentioned here for 2024. They do have a tough schedule, though, so that's the reason why I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out what Baylor is going to look like. So the Baylor Bears here at number 14. Number 13 is BYU. This will be their, of course, their second year in the Big 12. They lost a good amount of production from the year before in 2022. But you look at this team this year, they could be a little bit better as well. You look at their roster, they do return about 68% on the offensive side of the football and then 63% on the defensive side of the football. So they're going to be quite young this year. I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think they'll be pretty average type team. I feel like they can probably get to a bowl game, maybe like, you know, go 5-7 again. But out of all these teams that were newcomers from last year and the teams that are newcomers coming up this year, it's kind of hard to figure out how good these teams are actually going to be. Same thing with BYU, like Baylor, Arizona State, and Houston. It's going to be kind of hard to tell how good this team is going to be. Their schedule is not as horrible as last year's was, but again, it's kind of hard to just figure out how good BYU is actually going to be. So they're here at number 13, a team that I'm just really having a hard time figuring out. So they're here at number 13 in these power rankings here for the Big 12. Number 12 is Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati has a chance to be a little bit better this year as well. They do have a decent amount of production coming back this year. The defense, though, going to have some question marks. They do lose some players on the defensive side of the football, but this is a Cincinnati team that was pretty young last year, so I do expect them to be a little bit better. They did lose some players maybe from the transfer portal and everything, but you look at their schedule, it's not that horrible. It's one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12 this year. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but you just look at that schedule. They do have a chance to really have a very successful season. But again, you know, I'm not really that high on Cincinnati. I don't really expect them to win like 8 or 9 games this year, but I do expect them to win like some Big 12 games in the Big 12 this year. So again, Cincinnati, they do have a decent amount of production coming back. Again, the Bearcats are pretty young last year. We'll see if they can turn things around. They're here at number 12 in these power rankings. Number 11 is UCF. UCF coming off really like an up-and-down season last year. I was kind of high on UCF last year because they had a really good amount of production back from last year's team, but this year they are going to be pretty young on the offensive side of the football. That is the one area where I'm concerned about here for UCF. They lost a lot of players from that offensive team from last year, but defensively, I think they'll be quite good there on the defensive side of the football, but overall, this is going to be a pretty young UCF team. I don't really expect them to be the same team as they were from last year and definitely the years from before. But UCF, they're here at number 11. I still think they'll be a better team than Cincinnati, BYU, and then same thing with Houston, Baylor, and then, of course, Arizona State. This is a very consistent team and a very consistent program. When they were in the American Athletic, they were a very consistent team last year in the Big 12, even though they just went 6-6. But I do expect UCF to still be a pretty good team, even though they do lose a lot of players on the offensive side of the football. Again, that's the one area where I'm concerned about here for UCF heading into 2024. But they're here just outside the top 10 at number 11. Number 10 is Colorado. Colorado comes in here with second year under Deion Sanders. We'll see if Colorado will be a little bit better this year. They were 4-8 last season. This will be their first year in the Big 12, of course, coming over from the Pac-12. I do expect Colorado to be a little bit better than they were from last year. The offensive side of the football, they got Shadir Sanders coming back at quarterback. And they also got, Travis Hunter, who was injured last year. He's also coming back this year for the Buffaloes. But you look at the defensive side of the football, they do return almost everybody back from last year. So I think the defense will be a little bit better. They were definitely one of the worst defenses in the country from last season. And the offensive line also was a big struggle for Colorado. If the offensive line can improve this year for Colorado, they definitely could be a very explosive offensive team, and they can give Shadir Sanders plenty of time to throw the football. He was sacked a lot last year. That's going to be a big improvement here for Colorado. That's going to be definitely the most important improvement that Colorado needs to make going into 2024. The offensive side of the football, they do bring in some transfers, of course, to help them out, and then defensively, obviously, I think they'll be better on that side of the football this year. So I think the defense actually has a chance to be a little bit better this year, and definitely a little bit more better compared to last year's defense. So Colorado here at number 10. Just inside the top 10 here for me, just because of their defense, that they'll be returning returning this year for 2024. Number 9 is TCU. TCU coming off a bit of a disappointment last year, going just 5-7. I do expect the Horned Frogs to turn it around this year. This is a very consistent team in the Big 12. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that TCU made the college football playoff and won came up just short in the Big 12 championship where they went undefeated. But again, that's not the same TCU team that we saw from last year, maybe not this year, but I do expect them to kind of turn things around. They do have a lot of production coming back on the defensive side of the football. Offensively, they're going to be pretty young. I don't know if they got options at quarterback or anything, but defensively, they do have a lot of players coming back on that side of the football this year. So I think the defense actually will be pretty good here for TCU, and that's how they ended up here being at number 9. I think TCU definitely will have a turnaround of a season, so TCU here at number 9 in these Big 12 power rankings. Number 8 is Texas Tech. Texas Tech going to be quite young this year. I do expect them to be that consistent team here in the Big 12. Last year it wasn't really a good season. You look at Texas Tech on the offensive side of the football, they're going to lose their starting quarterback from last year. Enter the transfer portal. He's going to Louisville, so they do got options at quarterback. But this team does have, a very good roster. They are a very consistent team when it comes into the Big 12 and everything, and they're like, a Big 12 program that's very consistent as well, just like UCF and also just like TCU, like I mentioned before. But Texas Tech is also that other very consistent team here in the Big 12. I do expect them to be up there like around 6, 7, 8 wins, somewhere in that range in win total. But you look at Texas Tech, they're going to be pretty young. They do lose quite a bit of talent from last year's offensive team. Defensively, they're going to lose quite a bit of talent there as well. So they will be pretty young this year. But either way, this is a very consistent Texas Tech team, and I think they do have a chance to still be overall that good. So Texas Tech here at number 8. Moving on to number 7, we got Kansas. Kansas, I do expect them to be really good, better than this number 7 power ranking. But they did lose a lot of talent from last year's team. But they do got Jalen Daniels coming back at quarterback. That's obviously the big return, and that's why the Jayhawks are here on this list in the top 10. But just outside the top 5, just because of all the talent that they lost from last year. This was a very experienced team from last season. But this year they do have a little bit of young depth on the roster. So I don't think Kansas is going to be that bad. I just feel like their schedule is what, is making them a little bit so high for this year's team. And also a little bit of people are really high on Kansas to probably win the Big 12 championship. But it's going to be very hard for the Jayhawks to do that. I mean, obviously the talent that they lost from last year, but I still think this is going to be a very good Kansas team. I think they do have a chance to have a really successful season. And again, Jalen Daniels will be back at quarterback. That's the huge return here for the Jayhawks. If he stays healthy, if the offense could be very good with him, and if Jalen Daniels, like I said, could stay healthy, Kansas definitely has a chance to be a really good team and definitely a top contender in the Big 12 coming up this year. So the Jayhawks here at number 7. Number 6 is Kansas State. Kansas State going to lose a lot of production on the offensive side of the football. And this is a Kansas State team that I was really high on, in the month of January and also throughout the winter. But when I look at this roster now, their offense, they're going to lose a lot of production on that side of the football. A lot of players gone, entering the transfer portal and maybe also to the NFL draft. Will Howard, of course, going to be gone, so they do have some options at quarterback. So, yeah, the offensive side of the football is going to be pretty young this year for the Wildcats, but defensively they bring back almost everybody on the defensive side of the football. So I think that will be the biggest strength here for this Kansas State team. I don't think Kansas State is going to be really bad on the offensive side of the football, but again, it's going to come down to their offense. Again, a lot of young talent on that offensive side of the football, but again, defensively, they could be a really good defense. So Kansas State here at number 6. Moving on to number 5, we got Arizona. This won't be the same Arizona team that we saw last year that won 10 games in their final year in the Pac-12, but this will be a very good Arizona team. They do have a good amount of production coming back either way on the offensive side of the football. They got their starting quarterback coming back from last year. They got the defense that can probably be very consistent as well, but they're going to lose a good amount of talent on the defensive side of the football from last year's roster for Arizona, but I think this will be a very consistent team and possibly one of the favorites to win the Big 12. I was actually picking Arizona earlier in the year to win the Big 12, but with a coaching change and also the roster turnover on the defensive side of the football, I think Arizona probably will be, here at number 5 as of right now. Again, this is a team that I was predicting to probably win the Big 12 as of right now, but with the roster turnover and then obviously the coaching change, it definitely put the Wildcats down here to number 5 and also a little bit, of a step back from where they were the year before. But I think Arizona does have a bright future with a new head coach, and the future is definitely looking bright here for Arizona as they head into the Big 12 for the first time in 2024. So the Wildcats here at number 5. Number 4 is West Virginia. This West Virginia team going to return a lot of production on the offensive side of the football. Almost everybody coming back on that side of the football this year. The offense should be very good. Not a very explosive offense, but they'll be pretty good on that side of the football either way. And then you look at the defensive side of the football. They lost a good amount of production there on the defensive side of the football, but they probably do got some transfers that will probably help them out just a little bit. But again, I think the biggest strength here for this West Virginia team will definitely be the offensive side of the football. This team definitely has a chance to be a top 25 team and also maybe probably get inside the top 20 as well. So the West Virginia Mountaineers, a big dark horse contender heading into the Big 12 for 2024. Number 3 is Iowa State. So you're probably wondering, why are the Cyclones really high on this list at number 3? Well, Iowa State does have a ton of production coming back. They have a really loaded roster with a lot of experience on the roster coming back this year. You look at the offensive side of the football, they're returning almost everybody back there. On the offensive side of the football, they got their starting quarterback coming back this year. And then defensively, they have almost everybody back there as well. So this is a very experienced Iowa State team. They have the second most production coming back, returning production, I should say, coming back in the country. And they have the most production coming back in the Big 12 this year. So, and I think Iowa State could definitely be a top contender for the Big 12. I don't know if they could make the college football playoff or not, but it wouldn't really shock me just because of all the roster talent that they're returning and also the returning production experience that they have coming back. It wouldn't really shock me if Iowa State won the Big 12 championship this year, and it also wouldn't shock me if this was a top 10 team and also a top 15 team as well. It's going to be pretty hard for them to make it to the top 5, but again, this is a well-experienced Iowa State team, probably the most experienced that I've seen the Cyclones had in, maybe 3 years. They had that really good experienced team in 2021, but it didn't really turn out to be a good year for them. But this year, this is a roster that returns almost everybody back. Again, they do return a lot of players, almost everybody back on the offensive side of the football. So I think offensively, they have a chance to be really good, and then defensively, they have a chance to be a dominant defense. So watch out here for the Cyclones in 2024. A lot of experience coming back here for this team. Moving on to number 2, we got Utah. This is also another team that returns a lot of production back this year. I think the offense should be really good with Cam Rising, of course, returning at quarterback. If he stays healthy, Utah's offense could be a dangerous offensive team. They weren't really good on the offensive side of the football, really struggled at the quarterback position when he was out with the injury. So with him back fully healthy, I think Utah will be definitely better on the offensive side of the football. Then defensively, they do have a decent amount of production coming back there as well. They probably do have some transfers that to help them coming out as well. And again, defensively, they were pretty good last year. I think the defense will once again be really good this year. I think they were a top 5 defense in the Pac-12 from last year, but this is definitely their first year in the Big 12. But again, Utah should be a really good team this year, and the reason why they're so high on this list is just because of the return of Cam Rising at quarterback. So Utah, a team that could definitely probably win the Big 12 this season based on their roster talent and also based on the returning production and also based off of Cam Rising returning. But they are not my favorites to win the Big 12 as of right now for 2024, and that brings me to my number 1 team, and that number 1 team is going to be Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is my favorite to win the Big 12 still for 2024. I think earlier this year was Arizona, and then I switched it over to the Cowboys because if you look at the roster here, they have plenty of talent. They have plenty of talent on both sides of the football. Offensively, you got your starting quarterback returning for a 7th year, and then you got Ollie Gordon, your top running back, returning from last year. Potentially a Heisman candidate and probably one of the top running backs coming back this year in the country. Defensively, they do have a lot of production coming back on that side of the football as well. So yeah, this is going to be a very consistent Oklahoma State team, and this is definitely probably one of my favorites to win the Big 12 this year just because of all the roster talent, and not just because of the roster talent, it's also because they do return Ollie Gordon and also their starting quarterback from last year. So again, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are my favorite here to win the Big 12 this year. And again, this conference is just going to be so competitive to watch, and a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other. Anybody can win the Big 12. I don't really expect anybody to go winless in this conference. That's what I've been saying here since the month of January for all these Big 12 teams. And again, this conference is just going to be so fun to watch. So we'll see what happens here for 2024 in the Big 12 conference. But those are my Big 12 spring power rankings for the 2024 season. Let me guys know what you think about this list of teams, and what do you think about these power rankings. Give me your power rankings for the Big 12 down in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with this list? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.